Let's get for real for a second. Introductions are so important in just about every aspect of existence. A first impression can totally destroy any expectations that you have of someone or something or whatever. You mess up a handshake and some people might be like, I literally never want to see this guy again for the rest of my life. In 2023, if the first 30 seconds of a song you release or a YouTube video or whatever aren't interesting, most people are either gonna click off the video or they're gonna skip to the next song. And I know I sound like a boomer saying that, but it's true. The attention spans are just not what they used to be. At least for me, I know it's true. I mean, like, I don't think you could do a movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey with the 3-hour-long pan shots that they do in that throughout the whole movie, really. People would immediately be like, this is the most boring thing I have ever seen. And I think it's the same thing for TV and the point of today's video games. And I don't know why I said that like I'm a professor giving you guys a lesson, and today's lesson is video game introductions. But whatever. For most gamers, you're gonna need something that grabs your attention. Something that hooks you in and keeps you interested almost immediately. In a story-focused, cinematic experience type game, the hook will typically be some sort of emotional investment. Let's look at like The Last of Us. When you boot this game up, you immediately hear the anxious clicking of a clock, almost sucking the air out of the room, making you feel like you're holding your breath or something. You see a girl trying to take a nap, and then you hear Troy Baker's familiar-ass voice, and he's waking her up. It takes just about 0 time before you hear Gustavo bless your ears with the soundtrack of this game. It helps you start to realize what kind of journey you're about to go on. The scene is setting. Eventually, Sarah falls back asleep, and then Joel comes and brings her to bed. But then now Tommy's calling, and he's looking for old man Joel. Why the fuck did I just say it like that? So anyway, Sarah, she starts looking around the house, and then kablam! You hear an explosion out in the distance. And now you're like, okay, shit's going down. What's happening? Now tension's starting to rise. And as you're searching, you get to the living room, and Joel blazes through the back door. And before you can even really ask him what's going on, he starts loading his revolver. Soon after, their neighbor Jimmy tries barging in like an asshole, so Joel has to shoot him, getting blood all over himself and ruining a nice shirt. At this point, you know that it's happening. This is where, well, I mean, you kind of already knew, because if you watch the trailer, you know what this game's about. You know, the game's building here, and you're starting to get invested with the characters, and that's what matters. But Tommy shows up, he's stressed out, and you're stressed out, and Joel's stressed out, and everyone's fucking stressed out because shit's going down, and you guys just start driving away. There's a house on fire. There's a family looking for a ride. Joel says, fuck those guys. We gotta get out of here. So you guys hurry up, and you drive through, but then you get to the city, and everything is all fucked up out here, and there's zombies out, and they're eating people, and then a car accident happens. You guys get in a car accident because that's what I just said, and then now Sarah's injured, so boom, transition. Now you're playing as Joel. You pick Sarah up. You're trying to escape. You're trying to get through. You barely make it out because some military guy shoots the zombies that were chasing you. But plot twist. Alright, this is where we gotta slow it down a little bit. The soldier calls you in and unfortunately is given the order to kill Joel and Sarah. So he unloads his bullets straight at them, and as he's about to finish Joel off, Tommy shows up and gets rid of this douche. But unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough, and Sarah was hit. And tragically, she dies in Joel's arms. And this is one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in any video game, just ever. Look, there's a reason that Troy Baker was hired for like just about everything back then. This performance, it captivates you and makes you feel an attachment towards the character immediately. Most people at this point were totally enthralled, which is a word that I had to Google for this video. The game goes like completely like jigsaw mode and attaches the hooks right into you from that one movie. If I was like one of the more advanced video essay YouTubers, I could have had some like dope green screen edit where I'm like actually like hooking. Oh, that would have been so freaking cool. At this point, like I'm saying, you're totally, unless you're heartless, you are in the game at this point. The Last of Us has one of the strongest and probably most emotional openers of all time. You want to know more, and you want to see what happens to Joel in the future. In the game, it just keeps giving you reasons for that. It gives you reasons to want to keep going. And now, I know we just talked about that for like a whole ass minute or two, but The Last of Us is absolutely, obviously not the only game like that. There's a lot of other games that freaking attach themselves to you right away. Ghost of Tsushima. It's the same type of deal. It's another tragedy. You watch all your samurai boys get wasted in front of you. Not in like a party type of way, but like a Grand Theft Auto type of way. And you're like, oh, hell no. The game's quick to show you what you gotta do to survive in this world. There's like a cool little like sneak around section that kind of foreshadows what you're gonna be doing throughout a good chunk of this game. And then you find your katana. And it just have one of the coolest scenes ever. I seriously absolutely love this game, and the introduction immediately hooked me. I genuinely felt for Jin and his need for revenge. And I mean, it probably takes less effort to hook someone when you're like a badass samurai and your game takes place in one of the most beautiful game worlds you've ever seen in your life. That's so stupid. But still, the whole lead up to Jin's first interaction with Khan is so well done. The game introduces you to Yuna, who's like a sneaky thief, but also a badass, and Jin's a little wary at first, but she immediately, to the player, I think, is likable and cool. But she has the perfect traits of a main character. But despite all that, at this point, you want to seek revenge for your uncle. Not just Jin, you. Because you watched his ass get slapped in the head by Genghis Khan's grandson. So you go on this journey and you make it all the way through Shimura's castle as an honorable samurai. You make it all the way through, you're about to get revenge on that mega douche for your uncle. Oh, what the hell? Man, this dude's always playing around. I thought he was a goner. Khan himself challenges you and absolutely beats your ass, but this is important. This is the final insertion of the hook. You got your ass beat by this dude? No, absolutely not. You got to get yourself back up and through a couple training arcs or something, because you got business to take care of now. Those two games are highly acclaimed for a reason, and no, not because of their intro alone, but that's important for a masterclass piece of art. And you know, as much as I love The Last of Us 2, I can totally see how the introduction of a game like that completely stops someone from wanting to play a game. I feel like I can understand why people hate it, because you play throughout this entire first game and you grow an attachment to the main character, of course, because that's good writing. And then the sequel comes in and then introduces you to this new character, and within like the first, like, I don't know, 30 minutes of the game, they kill off the dude that you have grown all this attachment for and that you grew to love as a character. Why would they do that? That's like the opposite of a hook. It doesn't make you want to play as that character. So when you get to the segment of the game where you're forced to play as her, you're like, oh, well, this game sucks. At least that's how I felt initially. That's when the game slowed down. And for me, you know, I grew to like the character and I grew to like the game, but I can see why people wouldn't like the game, because it teaches you right in the introduction to hate that character. Okay, enough of that rant. A game should want to make you curious, as it goes hand in hand with hooking you in. Now, would you kindly take a moment with me to sit back and just imagine that you press start on a game, and when the screen fades in, you're on an airplane and your character is having a classic conversation in his head, and then boom, all hell breaks loose for a second. The plane crashes, and as you're swimming through the fiery remnants in the middle of the ocean, you see a lighthouse. You enter the building, and all you see is a statue holding a banner that says, "No gods or kings, only man." You already have so many questions. Curiosity is consuming you. And then you enter a little submarine pod thing, and before you know it, Rapture's skyline emerges into view. It's beautiful, and you have to know what's in there. Only a few moments later, and you see a creepy, crazed individual annihilating some poor dude, and now you're like, what the hell? Bioshock legitimately has one of the greatest intros in video game history. It takes you almost no time to be completely engulfed in curiosity and hooked. Within the first 10 minutes, you're already moving and grooving in this world. You have weapons, you learn about abilities real quick, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to go. It's simple and effective, and I think it's another great way to start a journey. Look, I plan on making videos for a while because I genuinely enjoy it, and it's just a fun thing to do. It's a fun way to talk about video games. And honestly, it might get a little annoying hearing about this series if you watch my videos, but I just can't help it because, well, it's Dark Souls. Obviously, we can't just talk about pure cinematic and story-driven games. As much as I love the classic, slow, but engaging burn of an intro, like all the games I just talked about, I love a quick, no baloney, get you straight in type of intro too. And Dark Souls is some of the best to do that. Usually you wake up as some lowly peasant, essentially, and are very quick to find a weapon and get straight to work. You know, Hook was a big part of Act 1 of this video, but these games, they have their own way of hooking you in. One of the first things you experience in any of these games is whatever god-awful, abhorrent, terrible creature that FromSoft decides to toss at you. Like when you're going through the undead asylum and you get ambushed by a giant demon monster and you do like no damage and you're like, how the fuck do I kill this thing? And then you get the real weapon and you give that demon the beatdown of a lifetime. And then you're flown away and you make it the Firelink Shrine, which is a somber, lonesome place. I mean, you can feel the You can feel the defeat in the air. Look at this guy. That is not someone who hasn't gone through a lifetime of defeat. I mean, this is a dying world and everybody's given up hope. And man, does it rock. You want to conquer the land here. And it's the exact same thing for Dark Souls 3. Once you give Gundyr the business, you're like, okay, I gotta see what else these guys have conjured up for this one. And you're immediately immersed. You're like, you're just wanting to get consumed in this world. This series perfects the simplicity of just hopping in and getting straight to work. But not only does it just simply land you in and say, here you go, there are just chunks of lore handed to you right away in these games that captivates players instantly. You want to know what the hell is happening. Like when you wake up in Bloodborne and you're like, what does this blood mean? Why is it so special? Why are the townsfolk going crazy and turning into beasts? It's piqued your interest. And that's why this formula just works so well. What the hell? This isn't what I was wearing. FromSoft games are built around the gameplay, and the introduction shows you that. But it's so well done because, right, like I said, right in the beginning, they sprinkle that lore in that complements the gameplay so much. It makes you want to stick around and kind of uncover more of the world and see what's going on. In other games, however, you quite literally just swing straight into action. This part's funny because I'm Spider-Man swinging straight into action. Like in God of War 3, within the first 15 to 20 minutes, you're fighting Poseidon, and he's like one of the ultimate goons. How much more badass does it get than that? Or like how I was showing earlier, being Spider-Man and going ham on Wilson Fisk and his mini goons. It's just sick. You can't really talk about fast-paced or explosive intros without at least mentioning Uncharted 2. This game starts off with Nathan Drake injured after a train crash and just narrowly escaping the train fully being destroyed with him inside of it. It's pure legitness. Or probably really any GTA game starting with and after 3. I mean, the first thing you do in GTA 5 is, well, I was gonna say pull off a heist, but it's pretty much a failure since they lose a guy and Michael has to fake his death afterwards. But still, it's action-packed and right away your guns a-blazing, which is how GTA should be. This is the second time in this video where I've randomly gone into a country accent. But why? These kind of intros are just as important as the ones where you develop a connection and care for the main cast as soon as you see them. It draws you in and catches your attention immediately. Typically, it's just a tutorial which is masked by engaging gameplay, like the first boss in the Souls series, or in Breath of the Wild. I love how they show you this seemingly big open world right off the bat and just send you on your way to gather items and gear. And then you beat the first initial 4 shrines on the Great Plateau, and now you have this huge, massive world totally completely yours to explore. It shows you the entire playstyle of this game without really holding your hand too much. These games are teaching you how to play the game, but they make it flashy and cool and keeps you wanting more of that sweet, sweet action. And again, like in Breath of the Wild, it makes you want to search the world and find more secrets, more shrines, more locations to just kinda sit and admire how beautiful it is. There's no real slog to get through when it comes to these type of intros. But, speaking of the slog, alright, before we get into this section, I just want to say that obviously this is all my opinion, but I would love to hear what games you guys think are tough to get through the beginning or that are maybe a slog. I don't think that any of these games are bad. I just think in terms of an introduction and hooking you and grabbing you, they just didn't do that for me. I think the game that I usually get most shit for having a hard time getting into is The Witcher 3. I have tried like 3 or 4 times to get into it and I just can't. The beginning of the game is just so slow and boring to me. The whole segment in the castle, getting the White Orchard, it's just, I don't know why I can't get into it. I've had friends tell me the typical, oh dude, trust me, in like 10 hours of gameplay, you'll be hooked and you're gonna love this game. With that being said, the last time I tried, I reunited with Yennefer and I was starting to enjoy it just a little bit more. And I'm not an idiot. I know this is one of the greatest games ever made, but the problem for me is just how long it takes for me to get here. I think that with most games though, for me, if they take me this long to start having fun, I typically am gonna put it down. Like recently with Starfield, and that's a bad example because that game is not on the same level as The Witcher, but I only played like the first hour to 2 of Starfield before I was like, okay, this sucks. I just can't. I can't keep doing this. Now, I don't want people to be confused and be like, well, you're just a dumb idiot and you must consume TikTok every day and can't handle any amount of real substance. Well, first of all, relax, imaginary comment I just made up in my brain. And secondly, length of the intro does not correspond with how much fun that you're having. Why did I do a little like that was really gonna hammer my point in? And point numero 3. What the fuck is wrong with me? Point number 3. I love Lord of the Rings and also I love medieval shit, and that's completely irrelevant and I really don't actually know why I'm even bringing that up. I guess just to show that I typically love the setting of something like The Witcher, but I don't know, whatever, I guess. Persona 5, I started playing recently, and I have been having a blast from the get-go. I mean, you're in the midst of being a silly little thief and doing silly little thief things, but the music grabs your attention instantly, and you get arrested, and you like go back and forth from the present and the past, and it's just sick. I love the first time you enter the castle with Ryuji and meeting up with Morgana. It's fun, and it feels adventurous. I feel like I'm about to embark on a unique and interesting story, even if it feels like it's taken a hot minute to get to. Hell, I played through the intro of Divinity Original Sin 2 and I loved it. The intro also feels like it takes 300 years to get through, but I love the dialogue, I love the world building, I love learning about each of the characters. I was invested. And I just can't say the same for the opening hours of The Witcher 3. For me, personally, again, I just want to make that clear. And look, I love Zelda, but I can absolutely acknowledge that Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess have absolute nightmares of introductions. Okay, nightmare is a little dramatic, but you get the point. The first few hours feel like it takes a billion years to get through and to get to the first dungeon. In both of those games, just too much is just thrown at you right off the bat. Obviously, the Zelda team learned from their mistakes, and, look at Breath of the Wild, and I suppose Tears of the Kingdom. But it doesn't stop those games from having rough starts. Zelda isn't the only Nintendo exclusive title that has some stinker introductions, because man, Pokemon has some of the slowest feeling intros I've ever played. Especially, and mainly, Sun and Moon and the infamous Sword and Shield. Both of these generations just start you off with so many cutscenes that heavily feature boring, hardly animated characters and uneventful pan shots. There's little to no dynamic here, and I even think a little bit of voice acting would go a long way. Hey, welcome to the wonderful world of Pokemon. It would at least make it feel less robotic and add a bit of charm, even if it's not top-notch voice acting. Too much hand-holding and just like exposition overload can kill an early game experience for me. And I know that Pokemon's mostly aiming for a younger audience, so that's why it's just more acceptable for these kinds of things to take place in Pokemon, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't feel like a slog to get through. Sometimes it makes sense, like in how I previously mentioned Divinity, but it has to be done well. Or if it's not, I just need more options to skip things. This is especially huge in subsequent playthroughs. Games like Borderlands 3 made it so you were unable to skip cutscenes when it first came out, and that's a game that's designed for you to play multiple characters. But even in Borderlands 2, which is one of my all-time favorite games, is so boring and hard to get through in the beginning now. Okay, but with that being said, I don't think that necessarily replay factor is a huge importance when it comes to introductions. I kind of wrote this whole video based around an initial playthrough. Oh, but I do guess it's important if the game is designed to be played multiple times. You want the introduction to be engaging every time you play through it. Okay, now I'm just arguing with myself again. There are just so many games that I couldn't keep playing because of the intro. Most recently, like I said, was Starfield. And I was excited for that because I love Fallout 3 and Skyrim, and I even like Fallout 4. But, like I complained earlier, Starfield, I just couldn't do it. And then there's games like Death Stranding, where the whole game feels like an intro. Deathloop, Death's Door, No, I'm just joking. Well, kinda. I really didn't like Death Stranding or Deathloop, but that's mostly not because of the intro. But there are games that I just couldn't get through. Even the other day, I started playing Lost Judgment, and I really enjoy it so far, but the game starts you off with a tracking follow mission, and I was wary at first. But I kept going, and it picks up really quick, and I know that the reputation of these games are that they're amazing. So I didn't give up. But first impressions, they really are everything. I'm sure there's a fairly large percentage of people that clicked off this video because the first thing you see is, well, there are some great forms of art and media that are out there that are hidden by bad or not good or just outright terrible introductions. And sometimes you do just need to get through the slog. But I digress. Whatever. This video has gone on for far too long. It's like probably getting close to 30 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that, which is far longer than anything I've ever done before. But hey, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe and dab me up.